Welcome to Living on the B-Side, where music and stories come together to inspire and transform. I'm your host Birgit, and in every episode we explore the universal language of music, how it shapes our lives, connects us, and tells the stories that define us. Through heartfelt conversations and powerful melodies, we uncover the magic that makes music so much more than just sound. Hey B-Siders, thanks for tuning in to a brand new episode, and today I am joined by Justin and Joanne from Silvermouse, or is it Silvermouse Live? I wasn't quite sure, but...
Silvermouse, yeah.
Silvermouse, okay, yep, great. And this is going to be a super interesting episode because we are talking about how to use music to really have an impact on your brain, and to do that in a fun way as well. So it's not like you're going to sit in a laboratory somewhere and someone's going to put these funny hats on you or whatever like that. It's going to be, I don't know, if you're as old as me, you probably remember the raves. So it might be something along those lines, but I think they're both going to explain it better than I do. So welcome to you both. Thanks for coming on the B-side today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Now, before we start going deep into what you do, how did you two kind of found each other, and how did Silvermouse come alive? Just sort of, can you just kind of condense it into, if it's possible, a little bit short?
Yeah,
how did you end up where you are?
I'm from the UK and Justin's from the States. I'd been traveling in various places, and then I found my way to Western Massachusetts and ended up at a theatre where he had been working. And Justin had been the music director at that theatre and was enjoying himself doing physical theatre, but also was really primarily wanting to work in music, sort of with the visual secondary to the music rather than the music secondary to the visual and the theatrical. I went to a show that he did. He was doing something similar to what we now do, which is electronic beats and then his multi-instrumentalism. I came from a rave background. As you mentioned, raves. That was really kind of where my teenage and then my early to mid 20s were very much, really my teens, late teens and early 20s were very much immersed in that world. And I could hear where he wanted to go with the electronic backing track, really, that he was playing with, that was basically a drum beat. I heard where I wanted it to go. I didn't have any musical training myself. We then met, and Justin handed me the tools that I needed to explore it on my own. He gave me the computer program Reason. I started exploring and experimenting with that and found my own musical language, and then invited him to come and play violin on something that I'd made. And then that was the very beginning of this language between us kind of beginning to form, and that was 18 years ago. So over this period of time, long period of time, Silvermouse has come to be what it is now, which is a significant evolution from 18 years ago, but a very natural one, that it's been a very organic kind of process.
Oh. It's funny how these things start. It always is sort of very interesting. Now, for those who don't know what you do, I think it might be time to really tell them what is it that you do, and maybe in a simple way for people who don't understand how the brain exactly works. How does that work? The music that you do and the performances.
I mean, we're, at the root of it, we're a band. We're a duo. She's an electronic music producer. I play guitar, violin, mandolin, flute, ukulele. We play something between, I think that probably the closest classification is psychedelic rock. It's free flowing. There's no vocals, so it has a heavy electronic influence, but we don't. When you try to put us into one of the like electronic genres, we typically don't fit because we're a little too free flowing. And so we play this form of music. It's completely improvised. I think that our music actually, foundationally is maybe most similar to jazz, where we have a header and a footer. So we'll have agreed on entrances to improvisations, and maybe we'll have a transition or two that we define. And other than that, it's completely improvised live. And so you end up with what is ultimately uh, kind of free flowing soundscapes. And sometimes there's enough of a beat to dance to, and sometimes there's not. Sometimes it's a little bit more ambient than that. And then in the last, so starting in about 2020, I guess, we started working with Monroe Sound Science, which I got a job at the Monroe Institute. They're a research institute into brainwave entrainment or consciousness, really, but primarily looking at the effect of sound on consciousness. And they've been doing that since the 70s. They run a retreat center, and when COVID hit, they found that they were forced to either get online training to happen or go out of business because the retreat center was closed for years. And so they brought me on board to help them actually get their trainings online. And as part of that, I also started looking at the sound, and I then worked as their sound engineer for a year and really got to understand the brainwave entrainment signals. And somewhere in all of that introduction, in a conversation with Joe, we were like, oh, we should add this to our music.
And we started using it. So we started listening to these binaural, they're not all binaural, but that kind of audio technology. We started listening to their meditations. And of course, it's during lockdown. It's kind of a fearful, sort of strange time where we live in a very beautiful place, but nonetheless, we were locked down. We weren't allowed to leave it. It was a very weird time. And obviously our touring and playing out and doing what we do as artists had also just completely shut down.
Yep.
And then these meditations gave us this space, as meditation is wont to do. And it's a hard thing sometimes to sit down and do. When we most need to do it is when we're most like, oh no. But the fact that it's an audio meditation was an easy in for me, because there was something surrendering to it rather than having to get past your own or get your own mind out of the way. It's easier to get your mind out of the way when you're surrendering to a sound. You could call that some kind of hack or some sort of bypass. I don't see it that way. In the same way that listening to a moving piece of music or watching or staring at an incredible painting, you're not bypassing anything, you're accessing something in a more easy and straightforward way. So accessing this meditation in this realm of consciousness was then making me more grounded and making me more inspired and feel less frustrated or kind of het up and in my brain, which then meant more music creation was happening. So we were composing a lot at home. We were playing a lot together. A lot of new music started to come through at that time. So then, like Justin said, we were then really intrigued. Like, this is really opening us to the process in a deeper way. What if we brought these sounds into the studio when we're rehearsing or when we're composing and when we're creating? What effect will that have on our process? These were all at the beginning very much questions. There was no sort of intention to share or do anything for other people at this point. It was very much exploration. And it gave this timeless element to our rehearsals and allowed us to drop in the same way that I would be more able to drop into meditation. We would drop into rehearsal in a more full, somehow more full way. And then we were recording, using it in the recordings. And then that led to the question, well, once things started to open up after COVID, what will it be like for an audience to receive these same brainwave entrainment signals that are underlying all of this meditation and that is now in our music? What will the effect be in a live music setting for an audience? because the Monroe Institute, it's an incredible place, but it's all very much through the idea of meditation. You're in stereo isolation. Your intention is very much an individual, expanded reality.
And this is a technology, it's been used in meditation for decades. It's not new, but historically, binaural beats, they require stereo isolation. So it took a little bit of work on, a little bit of looking into the research and innovation of how it works to come up with something that works in a live environment where you don't have that. Binaural beats, traditionally, you play one tone in this year and a different tone in this year, and they create an illusion in your brain that sounds like they're like wah, 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 but it's not real. If you take one headphone away, it's just like so it's
Okay.
so it's a thing that requires headphones, and you can't do it if you have two speakers. They kind of mix, but it's much more random depending on where you're standing in the room, depending on your proximity to one speaker. You might just be hearing a bang because the other speaker's over there and you're closer to this one. And so
And it is that boom, boom, boom that you need. Just explain.
Yeah,
that
and the
part of
brainwave
it.
entrainment, the way that it works, your brain, your brain is electrical. It works with electrical pulses. A brainwave is just when a lot of different neurons are firing in synchronicity, and in enough synchronicity to be measured. So like you really can't measure a single neuron firing in your brain, but they often will get into groups where they're pulsing together, and you can measure these brain waves. And your brain, it's not like your brain operates at one brainwave either. You've got lots of different. I mean, you've got billions of neurons firing every second, so it's really very complex. But you do get this measurable thing, which is what they use on EEG. When you see the little beep, like hospital kind of chart things.
Right.
And and so and those operate between 0 and about 160 hertz, which is a beat per second. So basically your brain usually is pulsing somewhere between no times and 160 times a second with these electrical pulses. And then, scientists have looked into this, and you can relate those to states of consciousness. So like between 0 and 4 times a second is pretty much you're asleep.
Oh,
And
okay.
between 4 and 8 times a second is like very deep meditation, relaxation.
Trance.
And
Yeah.
between like 8 and 12 times a second, you get into just a relaxed state of being. And like 13 up to about 30 times per second is where we mostly live our daily lives. It's just kind of standard waking awareness. And then above 30 is what they call beta, which is you get into hyper focus, hyper awareness, also anxiety, heightened states, right? Fear, like so, but and we found that in music, luckily, even when you play around with the higher states, where your brain is vibrating is only part of it. What you're feeling is another part of it. And usually when you're at a music performance and it's pretty chill, you're not triggering anxiety, right? That's so while that emotion might resonate at a similar frequency as excitement, they're both these heightened levels of brain activity. I think
I feel
that
like they're two sides of the same coin. It's one of the things I find most fascinating about it, and that kind of illuminates part of my own psyche to me as well. It's like I've tried to change my language. Say before a show, I can feel, let's use the word nervous.
Mm-hmm.
I can go very deep into that feeling of nervous, or I can reframe nervous as excited. It's actually the same sensation, but one is one side of looking at it, and the other is the other side of looking at. One is paralyzing, and one is liberating. And in those high frequencies where we can have anxiety, I feel we can also have almost an experience of divinity. It kind of reframes a lot of mental health issues, where some of the people who are the most bright-eyed seeing individuals are also some of the people viewed by society as the most, quotes, insane. And how also sometimes seeing can drive one insane. These things are just, there's a yin and yang relationship between these two-sided kind of phenomena. And it's like psychedelic drugs. It's like anything. You open a portal to something, and the most important thing is your setting, your container, your community, your safety, everything that surrounds and holds you. So that's a very huge part of the sharing that we do with our music. So we began these signal tests initially in like 2022 when we came out of lockdown, and they were tiny, small gatherings in an incredible little natural place nestled in the jungle, beautiful
Cool.
structure.
Jungle.
Invited sort of 15 to 20 people, all invitees. Everyone had to sign a waiver, but not really for insurance or legal purposes, really just to understand that you were taking part in something that may make you feel. We didn't know what it would make you feel, so we wanted
Okay.
people's permission to sign off on that.
Like guinea pigs.
Like guinea pigs, exactly. They were all friends of ours, and everybody felt great. Everybody gave us, gave entrance questionnaires and then exit surveys of everybody as they were coming into the process and leaving the process. And after sort of 3 or 4 of these signal tests, it became really apparent to us that something very subtle and powerful was happening at the same time in these spaces. That there was a shift in the way we were sharing our music. And then we've continued in this vein of, we play in nature, we don't play in bars. We play in spaces that are, we ticket events prior. So there's this, you read what you're coming to, it appeals to you, you're basically saying yes to the invitation, you buy your ticket, you come to the event. It's not a bar, you can bring alcohol with you if you want. There's no sort of banning of booze. But that's not what's driving the revenue for the evening, right? Just bar sales. Very, natural and inspiring spaces. So people feel very held, very grounded, very comfortable, inspired. They're already kind of opening just naturally, as we do as human animals. There's no sort of mind control going on. It's a human animal in their human animal element, among other human animals also in their element. And our element as social animals is to be together. So there's this very comfortable, natural container for what then occurs. And I think that's a big part of the whole experience that people have at these events.
I was just about to say that from what you've told me and from what I sort of, obviously looked up and everything, is the settings quite where it's happening seems to play also a big role in everything. Like it sounds like it's a foundation for people to come in. It kind of sets, I wouldn't say an expectation, but it might set the tone, the mood.
Very much
Is
so.
that true? And then you obviously build on that.
Yeah. I think that, in some ways it is like a mild dissociative, like having a drink or like a microdose of a psychedelic, things that people often would do going to music shows to kind of like, take the edge off and have fun anyway, where instead we're just using sound to bring your brain down. And especially with our music, I mean, our music it's pretty weird. It's, it's experimental music. And when you haven't heard it or you're not a fan, it's different than most of the other stuff you've heard. And so coming can historically, over like the 20 years of playing, like we definitely had shows where there was people who were like, what's even happening, right? And the incident of that decreased dramatically with this, because I think with the signals, it just took people out of that and let them be like, I'm listening to the music, and kind of dive in a little faster to just actually this, being in the sound that's happening, as opposed to trying to analyze what is this sound that's happening, right? And
I think the natural space takes the tension out of that, where am I, what's happening, because we're in this primal place that appeals to all of our senses. There's the moonlight, there's, you can see into the distance, you're held by trees, there's aromas, there's the sounds of the night and the earth underfoot, all of the sort of alienating experiences that in some ways our brains are permanently blocking out in order to feel okay. We're pretending we can't hear the traffic, we're ignoring the smells and the sensations that might actually be disturbing to our animal senses. But we have evolved in a way that we have the capability to override that and not be in a permanent state of stress. But in some respects, we maybe are in a permanent state of mild stress, or certainly some kind of arousal that isn't necessarily an animal's resting place. Does that make sense? So that combination of you calm, you're a little bit disarmed, but you're relaxed because you're in a space that feels comfortable to your inner being. There's an element as well of kind of taking off the clothing of the city or the busyness of the life or whatever, and you're stepping into this place. And then, as Justin described, the signals create this almost microdose, this ease of like, oh, okay, your mind doesn't have to be there analyzing, what is this, what's happening, what are they playing now? You can just drop into the moment, in the same way that I've experienced using this technology in meditation, that it's easier to drop into the place that I know.
I mean, that's in a way incredible for those people who just really cannot do meditation. I mean, there's some people that either don't believe in it, or they just, for some reason, they really have so much trouble just doing it. Because like you said earlier, it's some people, it's just when you need it the most, doing it is really hard. And I know that myself. Sometimes I know I need to just be and quiet down, but I just can't. It's just almost impossible to do. And I think what you do is just really cool, because instead of trying to force you to, let's say, sit down or lie down, you go, all right, I'll just go out in nature. I'll have some music there. And I essentially do more or less the same thing, but in a way that's actually not forced, and it's enjoyable. That's how I sort of hear it from what you're telling me.
It is like that. And I think that you can't underestimate the power of suggestion, like the placebo effect. There's a lot of FDA approved drugs that don't outperform placebos. They're still approved, they still work, but so does the placebo, right? And I think that one of the things that I've thought about quite a lot with this is that I feel like while the sound definitively has an effect, right? What you believe also has an effect. And the reason I actually brought up originally, like the kind of microdosing thing, is that in the 60s, they did an experiment with LSD. They put a bunch of people in a church. They took an entry survey. What do you think is going to happen to you? We're going to feed you this drug you've never taken. What's going to happen? People wrote down what they thought would happen. They went into this church. They all took LSD. They walked out. And basically everyone, what they thought was going to happen, happened. For some people, almost nothing happened. For some people, it made them feel anxious and violent. For some people, it made them feel happy and ecstatic, right? So like what you believe is no matter how powerful the carrier, because that's working with a substance that is inherently very powerful on the human psyche. Whereas I feel like the audio is much subtler than that. But definitely what you bring into it has an impact. And I think that with meditation, one of the things that I've thought about quite a lot is actually it's just about responsibility. If you're like, I have to meditate, I'm responsible for calming my mind, I have to do this, it's hard. Whereas if you can be like, the sound is going to do it for me, and you just believe that, suddenly it's easy. Like your brain drops into this calmer space like that, just because you don't have to take responsibility for it.
Well, also because the I that is taking responsibility is the very same part that needs to step aside for the piece to actually be felt. Because we are already there. In many ways, we don't need to meditate. A dog does not need to meditate because a dog's being is either in action, in rest, or in meditative contemplation or appreciation, where you see a dog just stoked. They're just feeling stoked. It's relaxing to look at them. It's inspiring to look at them. And I feel that, we have to get ourselves out of the way. And that's what can be so challenging in meditation. And then it can
Mm.
become an almost egoic, conversely, egoic performative experience to be an amazing meditator, which in itself is just an absurd concept.
Yeah. And
The
society
idea that
doesn't
you
help,
have to
does
do
it?
Yeah.
something, I have to
No,
do
it
something
doesn't.
to achieve this, as opposed
Yeah.
to just, hey, come listen to this.
Listen to this. And
Come check this out. Like, it's a whole different proposition, the way that you approach, I need to do something for myself, versus, hey, come over here and listen to this,
yeah.
maybe this can happen. Who knows?
There's a gentleness, I think, to it, to the audio. There's a gentleness and a softness, and we're so sort of self-flagellating. There's this idea that things have to be hard. I don't know where it comes from, if it originates in religion, or what's that work, the work of, is it Engels, the Protestant ethic and the spirit of capitalism. There's this sort of origin in some ways of this somewhat self-flagellating sense of it must be hard to be worthy, for it to be honorable, for it to have merit. And some things are hard. That's an undeniable. We growing food is hard, hauling water is hard, giving birth is hard, being present for your children is hard, marriage is hard, a lot of things are hard. But I think we can feel that we need to make things hard in order for them to have meaning, or that if it has meaning, it has to be hard. If it's not hard, it somehow lacks meaning or doesn't have the same. And I don't agree with that position. And it's like if you have a child and you want them to feel better, and you say, you must feel better. This is a bad way to be feeling. You need to feel better. Or instead you say, let's jump in the water. Pew, instant state change. Everything shifted. Mind lifts. Playfulness comes back, because that's the state of the child. That's the state of returning to. I feel like a very blessed to have received this gift in my own life of this meditation process, these signals, this audio technology, and the music that we've discovered. Because for all that I can do in my own mental experience, I have found this one avenue that helps me in that. And I love to share that, because it seems to help other people as well. It seems to feel good. And in all times in life, but especially this moment in human history, I think that feeling good and being together is everything, actually.
Yeah, and that just triggered a question in me, like, what sort of, how do you, mission sounds so formal and everything, but what do you kind of want to give people through your music? What do you hope that they get out of it and walk away with, and maybe, I don't know, what sort of ripple effect you're trying to create with what you do with your performances? Because obviously there's, like you just said, you just want people to kind of feel like they can come together and
and I think it's that experience, to experience both moving out of the way of themselves somehow, not, and to feel the power of that. I think it's a simple, for me anyway, it's a simple enough intention that it's just to experience the raw, pure essence of life flowing through you in the moment, as it always is, but to experience it in a way that is simple, and where you're not even necessarily aware of it at the time, and then it's over, and then you're changed in some way. Just because you've experienced something. not like a groundbreaking, we've fixed your brain, you know, it's something much more that we're going through at the same time. You know, it's just a moment that we're all sharing.
Okay.
I mean, I think that both of us came from an experience where in our kind of teen years, we were impacted heavily by people gathering around music, you know, and for her, that was the rave scene in England. And for me, it was really the jam band scene in the United States, you know, where there were communities, there was groups of people, they gathered to dance. Um, it wasn't, it was always music based. It wasn't really pop star based where you're like, oh, my favorite song, you know, like both scenes were based on relatively fluid music, unmemorable songs, like, you know, things that were just an experience to be at with other people. And I think that it's very hard to quantify what came out of that. But for me, I would say that it formed my entire perception of how I interact with the world, like, and how I wanted to interact with the world and how I felt about other people. And, you know, I think that so, so I think for me, you know, and this is without really even using the signals in our music, the idea of being a musician was just to continue enabling those kinds of experiences, you know. And I think that with what we are doing with the signals and also with our choices of venue, with how we set up shows, and you know, the curating a vibe, right? Like it's about curating a specific feeling that you want people to be able to have. And I think that um it's that's kind of the end of the intention for me. I think that you have to trust that when people get together and experience positive things together, you can't know exactly what impact that has on the world, but that in fact it is one of the things that creates, you know, goodness in people's lives.
Yeah. I sort of get the feeling that it's all about, and I think you've mentioned the word being in the present or being present a lot, and then whatever happens after happens after. So coming to one of your experiences is just, for me, it sounds like go in with no expectations, or if you have some, great, experience it and then walk away and just see if anything has changed. And I hope it's a positive thing, which I think it will be because of your signals, obviously. They're not like, you know, want to give anything negative, but yeah, that's sort of kind of the vibe I'm getting. Like you just want to do something good for people to have an enjoyable present moment that they hopefully can take away and carry with them for as long as it possibly can. That's kind of
Right now,
the vibe I'm getting.
There's a lot of dialogue about sound healing. There's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of people pushing random products using sound, and I'm not saying that they're not totally valid, right? But I think one of the things for us is that came up because the second that you say, "Oh, we use brainwave entrainment," what the way where people's minds goes instantly to like meditation and healing and this space. And I think that one of the things for us is that we are a band. We are not a modality. We're a work of art, right? Like we are not a healing modality, and we don't want to be a healing modality. We don't want you to come to our show because the brainwave entrainment is going to cure you. Like whether it does or not, that's a different matter. You know, whether it brings you calmness or not, that's a different matter. I think though that for us it's a work of art where, and maybe consciousness is part of that work of art. You know, when you paint a picture, you maybe are thinking, what feeling do I want to evoke in people? You know, and by using the signals and the music the way that we do, we are trying to evoke a feeling in people that makes them think. But I think
it's even a little before that though, isn't it? I feel like the conversation about what we evoke in people, I think you said it before, was like that it sort of stops there with the invitation and the creation of the space and the facilitation of the moment. And then we aren't really thinking about what we're doing to you or for you, because that would make me a doctor or something. That would make me a sound doctor. And I'm an artist and a mentalist who's having her own human experience and has this art that heals me to immerse in, and is something that we have a language in together. There's something mysterious that's happening when musicians are playing together, and a linguistic piece of music is coming in real time, and it's in that moment, in that space that you've created with all of those people who said, I want to be there, and came. You know, they're all part of the music that then comes and the magic that then comes. But really it's almost that I won't say intentionless, although I was about to. It's almost like there is this intention that is like, let you know, get out of the way, like, you know, let's be here without any chatter and noise. Let's do this thing and see what happens. And see what happens. And what happens is music flows, and where that music then goes is to the music.
Yeah.
and also to the receiver, and who the receiver is also a participant in that moment, the audience. And we're receiving too, because the signals are playing while we're playing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a sort of cosmic soup that it's hard to define what it is that I hope people get from it. I just hope that it's good. And I don't know where you know, what you bring, what you're coming from, what pain you have, what hopes you have, what insecurities you have. What I know that they're human. I know that you're a human. I know that you're feeling anything of this huge rainbow range of human experiences and feelings and emotions. I know everything is welcome apart from violence. And I think that that's all I can really want for another person.
Yeah. I mean, as a obviously as a music listener and concert goer and, you know, things like that, I'm not a musician myself, so I have no idea how that kind of side works. That's why I love talking to humans like yourself, because it's always interesting. But at the end of the day, I think, you know, music is just, and it sounds so cliche, but it's like a universal language. It's just inviting, and you just want to go there, and you just want to be there, because you know whatever it is that you're getting from like artists like yourself, musicians like yourself, is exactly what you need. It's like the medicine that you need. So I think, you know, anyone that goes to your shows is probably just open and just goes, and it doesn't matter about the signals. They just want to be there and experience it. So like you said, there is no expectation in that sense. You just want to go. And
sometimes people tell us things afterwards, and you know, about how they feel. Do you remember that couple at Glastonbury, the love couple? They were just this couple. They came every night. And they were so in love. They were a later relationship union, like they may have been 50. No, I don't know, somewhere in the kind of midlife range. Both of them, they had found one another in the last few years. They were so deeply in love, and they were so evolved and so generous and so open. And they came and just, they said, what did they say? Like that it was their favorite place of the festival, that they felt like it just held their love and magnified their love, or however it was they put it. We thought of them as the love people. And at the end of the very last show, like we were hugging each other. They were just beautiful, but they brought that because that was where they were.
Yeah.
You know, and then they felt like, oh, this is where we need to be, because this resonates with who they are and where they are. You know, we had other people who may be experiencing something very, very different, you know, personal loss or grief, you know, and maybe you find solace in music because it just takes you into a quiet place of sort of pure feeling, but gratitude of all feelings. Takes you into that nugget, which relieves the agony of your grief and takes you and suspends you and holds you and makes you feel safe and held. Or I don't know, it's not for me to know, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what's so wonderful, and people tell us things afterwards.
Yeah. Now, you just mentioned Glastonbury. When was that again? Not so long ago, was it?
No.
June.
Yeah.
Last June, so 6 months, something.
Wow. How was that for you guys? Being in the UK, which has sort of really, you know, not just from Glastonbury itself, but the UK has this very, I lived there for a while as well, and it always felt like it has this kind of mystical, energetic kind of scene. So I don't know how you feel playing there with the music you do.
Yeah, I mean, you know, one of our first major show for sure was at a festival in the UK in 2008, 9. And you know, we've been playing there most summers since then, and I think that, you know, this last summer it became really clear because I think we've beat our heads against the wall a lot trying to play at traditional music venues, and and wondered why it doesn't feel right. You know, and this last summer we did a combination. We did a few kind of traditional, well, not even traditional music venues, but music venues, places where you can go to listen to music, or indoor boxes with speakers, right? Like where people come and dance and we did a couple of outdoor shows, and just the difference was so profound. And at Glastonbury, you know, that place was crazy. That's a big festival. I think there was 350,000 people there on the Sunday. And we were tucked away in the woods on kind of a little stage that was hidden. We were playing at 1 in the morning every night. And so there was a big campfire, there's a big bonfire on the edge of one of the bigger stages that people would come to. And then they'd be standing around the fire, and then they'd hear off deep in the woods this other sound. And that's how we got people, was that they would filter through the forest to these like lit paths and woven like willow paths to find this little stage out in the middle of the woods. And it was really great. I mean, I think that it went well with what we do, because the people who made it out there because they were trying to get away from the other vibe at 1 in the morning, which is just like, you know, people who have been drinking all day or on drugs, and like it's going into the night. It can get very intense at a big festival like that. And so as the people like are like, let's go out to the edges, let's find, you know, and then they would wander in and be like, whoa, there's actually this thing happening here in the middle of the woods. And so it was, I found it to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I know you haven't been to Australia yet, have you?
No.
No.
We're working on it. We've written to a couple of places down there once or twice. The trick is, for a small act, you know, the cost of travel, it's hard to make enough money on shows to justify the cost of getting there until you've got like a slightly bigger audience ready to buy tickets there. So, you know.
Yeah, the cost of just coming to Australia as any artist, I think, is just will blow a normal person's mind. So that's why we probably don't get that many huge acts these days. I mean, they're still coming, but obviously not as regular. But I can only imagine what will be involved, you know, for you guys to come over. But if you could, and cost wouldn't be an issue, have you got like a place in mind that you would love to play?
I don't know that we have necessarily.
There's two places that I can't think of the name of either of them. You know, there's the places that we've been in touch with, and the places that we most like to play. I think, you know, the other most successful show that wasn't a festival that we did over the last summer was at this little community garden spot that was a 15-minute walk from any place you could even park. You had to walk down this long path for like 15 minutes into the middle of nowhere. And we sold out pretty much. We sold over 100 tickets to that show and packed this little community
It
garden
was gorgeous.
space.
It was really
It was
nice.
really
Wow.
very
Yeah.
wonderful. And I think that those kind of places are the best synergy for us because they have beautiful land that they're maintaining. They have a community who helps them maintain that land. So like they
Mhm.
come with a little bit of a built-in community. And then we have our thing and our message. So we're reaching,
Mhm.
we're piquing the interest of the community to bring people to their space and bring attention to their space. But also their community is bringing their people. And so you end up getting a bigger, more diverse mix of like, really cool people. And that's what we've also been doing even at home, just working mostly with um, sustainable agriculture, sustainable building places, places that have nice outdoor spaces. I mean, in our fantasy list is like a set of batteries strong enough to power our whole setup for a night so that we could actually play, a 5 mile walk into the middle of the rainforest.
Oh yeah.
Short of that, our only real limitation is like, we have to be within reach of
Of
a power
power.
plug.
Our
Yeah.
album artist, we've worked with an Australian artist on the album that we're working on at the moment.
Oh, okay.
And our previous release, well, we released the Glastonbury, or in the wood at Glastonbury as like 4 different sessions. That got released end of last year. Was it 2023 Beyond? Or
Yes.
24? Yeah. 2023 we released Beyond, which was our first full album with the Brainwave entrainment frequencies embedded in every track. And that's an Australian visual artist that we worked with. She's based in New South Wales, I believe, and she lives out in the woods. She has a similar kind of life to us. She's a creative. She lives in the woods. She's surrounded by trees and birds. She's very moved by nature. She is an intuitive artist. So
Mhm.
the process of working with her was fascinating. We kind of sent her music. We sent her lots of live sets, talked to her about the colors that come in our dreams and some of the motivations and the images and the ideas behind the music we were working with. And then she came back with some sketches and we kind of responded to those. And then she did a painting and then she sent us the painting through the mail, which we photographed. And that is our album art.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so wherever one place I need it to be near the home of Esmeralda Raven-Aponte in New South Wales so that she can come. That's one thing that that I would like. And I
Yeah.
have another friend who lives up near Darwin.
Oh, okay.
So I'd like to play somewhere
I
where
think
Jane
that
can come.
it's about finding,
That.
you know, finding a place that has a little community and that
Mhm.
has a community that would be interested,
Yeah. Yeah.
as a starting point, and then finding somebody that's got, at least a couple acres and isn't going to get a neighbor to have noise complaints. I mean, in a lot of ways, what we're doing are glorified house parties. They're often just people's farms where we're plugging into an outlet and using a field or a forest
Selling
area.
tickets as long as
You
there's
know,
bathrooms,
it's not
power, and
big, fancy
Yeah.
stage.
things. And so, yeah, those are the criteria. You have to have
Yeah.
some place the public can use a bathroom. You have to be comfortable with that and have an outdoor space that allows music. And beyond that, I think it's about finding for us the pockets of the world, the people, the communities that want it, and
Yeah.
going to those people.
And then
Well,
a country
Australia's a big
like
country, so
that.
there will be
Yeah.
pockets.
Yeah, that's
There'll be
and there'd
pockets.
have to be enough to kind of connect all the dots because it is a huge place.
It is,
Um,
yeah. It is.
but it would be great.
Excellent. Wow, I didn't realize how quickly time actually went because we were just sort of chatting and you were showing so much. And
Yeah.
I didn't even want to interrupt you guys because I just love the flow of what you were sharing and it was just going nicely everywhere. So thank you for making my job easy.
Again,
And I
thanks for
think
having us.
it really gave, I think, a good basic understanding of like who you guys are, what you do, and how you're using the signals in your music. But at the end of the day, as you said, Justin, you're musicians, you're artists, and you just want to share your craft with whoever's there who's willing to open and listen. So
Yeah, and if people want to, I think there's a couple paths to go down. Obviously, our music is on all the streaming platforms as
yes.
Silvermouse.
Mm-hmm.
And on social, like, which is where you got our website and all our social media is Silvermouse Live.
Yeah.
But on streaming platforms, we're just Silvermouse, and the Glastonbury shows all have the signals in. The Beyond album had the signals in. There's a couple of singles. They actually all say
With
featuring Monroe Sound Science
Okay.
as like a
So
featured artist on the album. But so it says featuring Monroe Sound Science on all the releases that have it. So that's one way to experience it. There's also, we often tell people that if you just want to kind of check out the signals and in a different space than our music, the Expand app is an app that the Monroe Institute puts out. It's free.
Okay.
Or at least it's free for you. There's like 30 or 40 meditations in it that are free. It does have a paid tier, but
Yeah.
you can definitely get a deep dive
for free for sure.
Just installing it, and that is the same underlying signal technology, although actually a lot of that is also, there is binaural more in the app because it's made to be used with headphones again, so it's a slightly different technology, same concept though.
Yeah.
But it's just a different way to experience it, so that you can be like, well, I want to go to sleep, I'm struggling to get to sleep, so let's listen to some signals that have been crafted for that purpose. Some of the meditations are guided, with a voice. Some of them are just nature sounds. You can kind of choose where you go with that. But that's another great way to access the space in the brain,
And I think also to abstract it, and this obviously you have to be interested enough to want to do this, but from the music. So you can say, oh, I listened to Silvermouse and I like that, or I didn't like it, or it made me feel this way. And then you can go listen to, some standard meditation or even guided meditations using the same signals. How does that make you feel? Like, and eventually I find that you can notice how different signals make you feel. We often tune our signals to natural phenomena, which again is an art, not a science at all. But like we, have a signal set we play on the full moon that's tuned to a 28-day cycle, kind of brought down in octaves until it reaches the what's usable in brainwave entrainment, and it's got like a slightly more buzzy energy
than the Earth one.
Then yeah, we also have one that's tuned to the Schumann resonance, which is like the ambient resonance of the electromagnetic atmosphere average. Okay. And that tends to have a sort of a slightly calmer and more relaxing thing, and it's very subtle again, but when you start to like pay attention to your consciousness and then how different sounds make it feel, it's I geek out on that stuff. I find it very interesting.
Yeah, I honestly think today's conversation was a good starting point for anyone that might be interested in it but didn't know how to start. And like I said, your music is probably the best way to start if people are not really into this kind of meditation or they haven't tried it yet. Maybe start with you guys, It's obviously a great way. It could be fun. You never know. So
yeah,
definitely.
I mean, definitely. I think if I send the album to people, my recommendation is, if you can, to just put headphones on, and get comfortable and just listen. Even if it's you just a track, just take a track. And our tracks are long. It's not like 2.5 minutes, radio friendly, blah blah. They might be 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes long, depending.
Okay. Yep.
It might be 5, but we're definitely not like little nugget tunes.
Okay.
So, listen to a track, put your headphones on, lie back, close your eyes, and see. You have to stay lying down. If you feel like getting up, get up. But to kind of give it that immersion and see how you feel.
Excellent. I think that's a great way to end our conversation. Go and try it, guys.
Yeah, go try it.
Try it. And we're always open to feedback, obviously. We're always curious to know what's
love to know
happened.
any feedback.
Yes.
Always love to know feedback. And also anyone who has farm or land or connections to
Yes.
community gardens who would like to host
Yeah.
Silvermouse, please reach out, because a big part of putting a tour together is sort of getting as many different little buttons together, and that kind of creates the snake that can take us on our journey. And a
Yes.
couple of kind of like bigger festivals or bigger towns where we and just little dates, just connecting it all together. So reach out if you have an idea for a place.
You've heard it. Get to it.
Get to it. Yeah.
Get to it. Show us where these communities are.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much to both of you for coming on and sharing everything. I'm going to start my day now. And I know my head's a little bit buzzing, so with everything you've shared, which is a good thing. I like that. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks again for being here. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
And to you B-siders, as we've just said, let us know what you think and feel. Always curious to find out. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in, and I'll be back with you guys very soon. Until then, much music and love as always, and take care. Until next time. Bye. Bye-bye.